That down, guys. Let's get on to some stories here, shall we? And holy crap, breaking news.
Woo!
For many decades and decades and decades, there were these things called the Paramount decrees, which basically, I mean, it's more complex than this, but basically said movie studios could not own movie theaters or movie theater chains. Now, a couple years ago, the Paramount decrees got overturned because we live in a different era now. That, you know, the rules didn't really apply as much or in a different way than they did back in the day. But really, no studios have bought anything. I mean, Netflix bought like one or two theaters.
Yeah.
Like they bought
like
the Egyptian
style.
in Hollywood, right?
Mm-hmm. Some boutique style.
And then they bought a single standalone theater in New York as well, but nothing big. Well, that's done. Because according now to the Hollywood Reporter, Sony Pictures has acquired the financially distressed, but in fan communities, iconic movie theater chain, Alamo Drafthouse, and what they're calling a landmark deal, not to be confused with landmark movie theaters, and a landmark deal that puts studios back in the theater game. All right, this literally just dropped about 20 minutes ago. So this comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter, says this: in a groundbreaking moment, Sony Pictures Entertainment has acquired Alamo Drafthouse Cinema in a deal that puts a major Hollywood studio back in the business of owning a movie theater for the first time in more than 75 years. From 1948 to 2020, the U.S. Department of Justice prohibited film distributors from owning an exhibition company under what was known as the Paramount Consent Decrees, or just the Paramount Decrees, which arose from a 1948 U.S. Supreme Court ruling. The decrees essentially dismantled the old Hollywood studio system by forcing the majors to divest their theater holdings. At that time, the majors essentially controlled all aspects of filmmaking, from the talent to the productions to the theaters. The decrees forced exhibitors to stop practices like block booking, which was a huge problem, bundling multiple films into one theater license, and circuit dealing, entering into one license that went on and on and on and on. So now, the first thing I want to point out here is that Alamo Drafthouse is a small theater chain. I believe it's 37 locations, right?
Kind of like iPick, you know? They're not a huge chain.
Exactly. Well, which is bigger than the John Campea movie theater chain.
That's true.
Which is my living room. But, I mean, they're not AMC or Regal or Cinemark or even Harkins or anything like that. But 37 marquee theaters. Like, I remember when they opened their Los Angeles location a couple of years ago, it was culturally, it was a big deal. In this town. Alamo Drafthouse, while I've never been a big fan because of the guy who used to own them, because I'm not a fan of that particular individual, but even when that person owned them, I'm like, listen, I got to admit, Alamo Drafthouse does a lot of things right, man. And now they're owned by a movie studio. Mm-hmm. I have so many questions. And again, you have to forgive kind of my disjointed thoughts on this right now, because literally I just found out about this 20 minutes ago.
Right.
But it raises many questions. For example, will Sony have to charge their own movies that play in the theaters the same amount of ticket retention and all that kind of stuff that they charge other people? Because remember, even though it's all under the Sony umbrella, every individual movie is treated as its own enterprise and they have their profit margins and their losses. So is Sony going to give special treatment, special rates to Sony movies that play there? If so, is that anti-competitive? Will that get them sued? Will they only show Sony Pictures?
I don't think they can get away with that.
I don't know that they can get away with it either, but if they own it, they have the right to say what movies they want to and what don't want to play.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, The Perfect Jean. Guys, are you tired of the rough and rigid jeans crushing your boys? Well, today's sponsor, The Perfect Jean, finally solved all of your denim difficulties. They make great looking, perfect fitting jeans that are as comfortable as sweatpants. The secret? A special denim fabric that is super soft and has the perfect amount of stretch so you can squat, do yoga, or just sit around all day without ever having to take them off. I'm going to admit I was a little bit skeptical because to me, jeans have always been jeans. They're practical, but not always the most comfortable. But I'm telling you guys, it's not an exaggeration. Once I put on these jeans, the Perfect Jean redefined what jeans can be to me. They're the perfect fit, they stretch, they breathe, and again, they're just insanely comfortable. So guys, it's finally time to stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc/Campea15. Our listeners get 15% off your first order plus free shipping. Free returns and free exchanges when you use code Campea15 at checkout. Again, that's 15% off for new customers at theperfectgene.nyc/Campea15 and use the code Campea15. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support the John Campea Show and tell them we sent you.
They actually use their own technology, like their screens, their cameras, whatever, to actually play
That's
movies?
a great question too. Because, I mean, Sony was at the forefront, by the way, of the transition to digital cinema.
I mean, they do make other than LG, they do make some of the top OLED or OLED.
And they've actually even been getting in the business. They've been developing their own actual, basically TV screens in movie theaters. That are like the most giant screens ever. Samsung's been making them too and stuff like that.
The possibilities are endless here because they even have PlayStation. Will they make buying movie tickets easier through your PlayStation? Will they have ads coming across screen to watch it at their theater? There's so many
Are they
things.
going to pull an Apple and make a complete ecosystem
Could be.
out of this? Where
They can. They have enough assets now.
And
to
what about
actually-
this? What about this? How about this? Let's stretch. We're just spitballing here. Okay, you bought a ticket to a Sony movie at a Sony movie theater. Does that ticket come with a digital code that maybe in a month you can stream that movie on your PlayStation if you own
That's
a PlayStation 2? Do they, or will that become anti-competitive and get them in trouble like Google and Apple have gotten in trouble?
I think where they have to be careful though is they're going to have to maintain, and I know they said they're going to maintain, but they got to maintain that quality and that feeling of Alamo Drafthouse. They can't start getting cheap on it.
Okay.
And they got to make that a premier movie theater experience, which Alamo kind of delivers.
Well,
So-
they did, because I watched ever since they went into bankruptcy last year. I just recently watched. It was on YouTube, but I watched this like 20-minute news expose on how Alamo Drafthouse workers have been so mistreated lately that they've actually been talking about unionizing and stuff
that's
like
right.
that.
Yeah.
And it just looked like that's been going to crap. But listen, Sony brings what's the technical term? Oh, yes, an ass load of money to the table. And if Sony decides to actually pour real capital into Alamo Drafthouse to make it what the ideals of Alamo Drafthouse always was and make it the premier movie-going experience, it will not only will that be great for anybody who lives near an Alamo Drafthouse to go see their movies in, but it will force the other stalwarts in the space, Regal, Cinemark, AMC, all of which you do a bunch of things right and some things wrong, whatever, but it'll force everybody to raise their game a little bit.
Wasn't Sony one of the first people? I remember going to the first CinemaCon where I came with you, our very first one. One of the things before every presentation.
That's the one where we sat down with Hugh Jackman, isn't it?
Yeah. They said, we now have these cameras set up in the room. So if you're trying to film what we show, and I believe those cameras, whatever they were that were there, were from Sony. I think it was called, I want to say Eagle,
a lot of theaters already have those.
Eagle Eye, but that was the first company.
They're pretty common devices now. Yeah, those like night skill things that can detect cameras in theaters.
But my point is, Sony has had their hand in the theater games, in some sort of way, right?
Well, I mean, like a lot of studios, they've had their hand in the theater experience to one degree or another. But I mean, this is the first time in forever, because listen, when the Paramount decrees got overturned 4 years ago, a lot of people said within the next couple of months, every single studio is going to own one of the theater chains. And I said at the time, no, they won't, because they understand, they know how tough it is to actually make money owning movie theaters, which is why they screw over the movie theaters so much. And I said, we are not about to see a flood of studios buying up. And sure enough, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and none of them did. And now when we've got one, Sony's bought a big name, but small movie theater chain. It's going to be interesting to see if they can figure out a way to make it profitable for them.
One more thing, Joe. Do you think this will, if they actually do get this going, do you think like it'll convince like maybe directors who like theatrical releases to actually possibly favor Sony, like bringing their movie to Sony or this and that?
Well, remember it was Sony at CinemaCon, right? They're the ones that got up on stage and said, we ain't about making straight to streaming movies.
Right.
We make theatrical movies. Because remember, Sony is also the one studio that is like, we're not getting into the streaming game. We don't have Sony Plus And we have no intention of making Sony Plus. We make movies for theaters. So I think they've already kind of become, in many ways, the ideal spot for directors who want to make sure their movies get theatrical release and stuff like that. So listen, this can all tie in a lot of different ways, like how they could connect this to the PlayStation experience, how they can connect this to what esports. Alamo Drafthouse could become like a go-to location now for like PlayStation esports kind of stuff too. I mean, the possibilities here are really, really quite big. And it's going to be interesting to see. Again, you have to forgive the disheveled thoughts I have here because, again, we just found out about this. But the possibilities and the questions right now seem to be endless. Anyway, the question is for you guys. What do you think about this? Sony Pictures has become the first movie studio in my grandparents' lifetime to actually now own a, albeit small, theater chain. They now own Alamo Drafthouse. The possibilities are endless here. Could be a very good thing, could be a disaster. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.